Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two, and homemaker. Come along with me as I share my love for simple living, growing in my allotment garden, diving into what it means to be an urban homesteader, and embracing life as a mother and homemaker. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. Thank you so much for joining me here today. So, fun fact, I know you guys won't have noticed this, but I actually haven't recorded a podcast in about 6 weeks. So, sitting down at my computer to record an episode is like, what am I even doing? I don't even remember how to do anything. It's crazy because I generally batch record things, and when I interview guests, I record sort of like really intensively and then have a bit of a break. So yeah, it all just feels a bit weird to be sitting here again. I sat down, opened my laptop to record today's podcast episode with my guest, and yeah, I was like, oh my god, I haven't sat here for ages and I don't know what I'm doing, and yeah, it was just me trying to get back into the swing of things. So anyway, little ramble there from me. Let's jump into today's episode. Today I am interviewing the wonderful Lindsay, and we are going to be talking about all things motherhood, but not just that. We are going to talk about beyond motherhood and how we can nurture ourselves as parents outside of the day-to-day of motherhood, and how we can separate our identity from who we were before we had children, who we are now, and where we want to go, and just looking beyond all of that. And so yes, I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. We had a great chat. Me and Lindsay have followed each other for absolutely years at this point, and you know, some of our children are the same age. And yeah, so without further ado, let's just jump into today's episode. Hi, Lindsay. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. So, before we dive in, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Amy. I'm a newly stay-at-home mom. Just in the last year, I have three little girls ranging from 9 years old to just a few months old. And prior to being a stay-at-home mom, I was working in the professional setting, as well as remotely during the pandemic. I've kind of had a lot of different ups and downs, and really, I've just been across the board, all the different opportunities when it comes to how to be a mom in the professional setting, as well as be a stay-at-home mom. So lots of different mom roles within the last 9 years, but definitely really enjoying this new one as a stay-at-home mom.
Excellent. So today we're going to talk about motherhood. And so you just said you're the mother of three children. I am the mother of two. So how have you sort of navigated your journey of sort of rediscovering and also nurturing your identity sort of beyond motherhood?
Yeah, that's a really hard topic. I mean, everybody's got their own story, their own journey. We're diverse in ourselves and our upbringing, as well as like what motherhood has thrown at us. Everything's situational. Hello, pandemic. I mean, talk about all of us learning something different about ourselves and our parenting styles, um, getting different experiences there. So, for me, I've gone through a lot of ups and downs. I started out having one child, um, exclusively for her first 6 years, and I thought, all right, this is my motherhood path. This is how I take care of myself. Um, and there was a lot of frivolousness involved. I could do all kinds of things. And she was getting older. And then now I'm thrown back into that younger age children parenting style. And I've got two back to back. And that was really startling for me. Um, they're not spaced out. And I am constantly taking care of something for them. There is no me time. And so I went really deep into, holy cow, what about me? And how do I approach that? Where do I even start? Because there is not a second of time for anything to do with me. So at first it was kind of just jokey, like my hobby is parenthood. My hobby is motherhood. Like identity, myself. Are you crazy? But then I started to actually feel the effects of what I was saying. That was pretty detrimental. Um, harmful to myself, in the sense that I'm just willing that into fruition. I'm saying bye to me. I am just a mom. And that's not to devalue motherhood at all. I mean, that does take everything out of you. But if you're not putting back into yourself, if you're not taking care of yourself at any level, you're going to hit a level of exhaustion, and you're going to start to feel that even though you're not trying to devalue yourself, you're going to start feeling that. It's going to be a reality for you. So I had to detach from the idea as a whole that my identity was even a set thing. I have to realize that not only do each of my children perceive me differently, the people around me perceive me differently, I perceive myself differently. I'm a different mother to each of my children. And so just completely detaching that there's a set identity assigned to me. I'm what I need to be, when I need to be it, where I need to be it. And I have to be okay with that fluidity. I'm going to have to meet myself where I'm at. I'm going to have to meet my children where they're at. And, maybe even just the idea of proclaiming things isn't really the space I need to be in right now. So that's a hard thing to do. That really is a hard thing to do, because we want to ground ourselves to something. We want to be able to proclaim something. And that maybe does work for some people. It doesn't work for me in the dynamic that I'm in. But I had to move away from that really hard black and white mindset of things. It's I'm more isolating my needs, I guess, and identifying what they are at the different levels, and then seeing how I can work them in. And I personally haven't hit the hobby, or some of those, what some people would probably consider is frivolous. I haven't really got there yet. I see what my path is to that, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because so when I had my first child, so I have just a 2-year age gap between my two. I don't know, is yours smaller than that?
So the middle and the youngest to your age gap, that is a tough one.
It,
Holy
it
cannoli.
is tough, and it's funny because actually, before I go on and say what I was going to say, me and my husband, we were like, "Do you remember when we were like, oh yeah, let's have another baby? A 2-year age gap will be perfect." I'm like, now they're 2 and 4. I'm like, this is crazy, but it's
That's
funny.
exactly.
Yeah, it's funny because I came off of maternity leave with my first straight into the pandemic. I came off of maternity leave in March 2020 and was like, okay, what am I going to do? And then it's like 2 weeks later, it was like, hi, global pandemic. And so I just sort of decided to kind of slot back into sort of where I'd been sort of pre-children, the face of uncertainty. We like cling to the things that are comfortable to us. But then when I had my second, I knew I didn't want to go back to work. There had been a very brief period of time between coming off one maternity leave and essentially going on to the other one. And I struggled, like you were saying, like I struggled to locate where I was at and locate who I was. And I was, very determined, like, no, I'm just going to stay home and that's going to be what I'm going to do. And then I had to sit really uncomfortably with that for a really, really long time. And then ultimately, I think what I realized was like, I do need something more than just motherhood. And I love being a mum and I love the kids, I always feel like I think as parents try and preface everything we say is I love my children, and like of course we do, of course we love them, but it's okay to say that being a mother alone is not always enough.
Yeah. And that I really think that that's a challenge that moms who go from, working in that professional setting at any capacity to jumping straight into stay-at-home mom, you feel that. And I felt that so strong too. It was, for me, my first was about 6 years old when the pandemic hit, and I'm a busybody. And my inclination was take on homeschooling, because at the time, she was in public school. I was working, I was traveling a lot. And then, working full time. The remote was a new aspect for me, but I found that I was putting in way more than 40 hours a week. The work went home with you because it was at your house. I was putting in up to like 60 hours a week. And then I got pregnant, and that was a whole new ball game, trying to balance it all. We were trying to buy a house, all those classic things that people surrounded the pandemic with was happening to us all at once. And I just took it on. It was like, all right, this is the way it is. And you just trudge through. And then I did hit a break point. I came back from maternity leave after my second was born. We had a little bit of a rough time with her. She was colic. She wasn't gaining weight. She was very, very fussy. It was tough. But then it was like, well, maternity leave's over. Here we go, right back like we were before. We're back to homeschooling. We're going to, work from home, balance the baby all at once. And it was just like I was climbing, instead of really pulling back and saying, what is my true capacity? Am I taking care of myself, or am I just trying to like save the day, be superwoman? Because that's what everybody expects of moms. Be that superwoman, do it all. Don't slip up, because we're going to find a reason or another to criticize you. I was doing all of that. And then all of a sudden I realized I've gone too far. I was catching myself be really cranky with my children. I'd be at a really stressful point in work, taking on more than I realistically needed to. And then I'd want to lash out. They'd be like, hey, mom, I need something. And you're like, just leave me alone. 2 seconds. Just don't talk to me. And then I found out I was pregnant with my third. And we were already kind of starting to discuss, look, this isn't sustainable for us anymore. Because most importantly, my mental health is declining. I'm not taking care of myself. And you feel that physically, you feel that mentally. I mean, it's across the board. And we hadn't really figured out, does that mean I leave my job? Does that mean, that I put everything into home? What does that mean for us? We were trying to figure that out when I got pregnant with my third. And at that point, the decision was kind of made for us. It was like, is it really worth working to put my kids in daycare? Because I'm going to have to go back to the office. And that's not really something that we are okay with, and that just really put a full halt on me continuing to be working in the professional realm. That being said, doing a full cutoff, kind of like what you were talking about, just, whoa, it's jarring. Yes, being a stay-at-home mom is like the busiest thing that I've ever done in my life. 3 kids, that's a lot. But there's something about it, and I still can't quite figure out what it is, where I needed something. And maybe it is that self-care aspect, that I needed something to call mine.
Yeah.
And I've not fully poured myself into one thing or another. I tinker. For me, tinkering has kind of allowed me to, kind of like what I was saying earlier, it allows me to put more into it when my capacity is there to do that, and pull back when I need to be that safe space for my kids, or I realize that my mental health is kind of going on the fritz, but at the same time, completely being out of it, having something. You don't feel grounded, even though you could be grounded in motherhood. I don't know what that is. It's rough.
Yeah, and do you know what? I don't know either, but the same thing, I just feel like there's something else. And it's like, I'm the same, I have this podcast, my blog, I'm always tinkering with something, and it's that gives me enough to be Amy again. And I like the same things, just that it gives me the ability to, when I can sit there and, mess around with something or other. And then there are times when, my life is just absolutely full on in motherhood, and there's no external demand then as well. So like today, well, actually the beginning of this week, my children have been very needy. They've needed me all the time. Like, you know, my son was breastfeeding loads at the beginning of the week. And I was like, what's happening? You're 2 and you're breastfeeding like a newborn. Like, what's happening? And then today, they have been playing together all day long. Like, they've barely needed me. And I was like, oh. And, you know, I was able to like get my laptop out. I did a little bit of stuff for my blog. And, you know, it ebbs and flows, I guess. And, you know, self-care is, you know, it's one of these things that like the magic they talk about, like, are you like getting enough self-care? And half the time as a mum you're like, no, not really. What is self-care? But you know, it's just not easy when you're a mother, and particularly, you know, when you're a mother of small children, you know, that their needs are really, really high. So how, if you are at all able, do you sort of prioritize self-care and personal growth in your own life?
Yeah, that's the tough one. Like, oh my goodness. So, I mean, oh, you look at social media and boy, is that like a dangerous place. You know, there's so much to harvest from it that's good. You can do so much learning. And at the same time, there's a lot of harm that can come from it. Sometimes it's hard to separate, like, that's not my life. That looks a little more aligned with what my life is like. You know, there's these people out there that can afford to purchase all the help that they can get. There's the people that can't afford to do that, or their comfort levels are different, you know, all of that. And so I started to look at that for me, because I really did. I needed to figure out, you know, how am I taking care of myself? One child me, you know, she was 6. If I wanted to go get my hair done or get my nails done, or I had a certain level of what I at that time was considering self-care, I could do that. You know, I could just step out and say, you know, play with your dad, or, you know, do something with yourself while I take care of myself and how I wanted to. But that's not really possible now. I've got someone who's attached to the boob all the time, you know. I don't want to just step away from that one. And I have another one, a toddler, who, you know, she needs some sort of, you know, she's working on self-play and things like that, but it'd be nice to have somebody in the room providing that moral support, that emotional connection. There's so much going on, the dynamic. So I started to just kind of pull back and look at what really is self-care. And there are 2 really polarizing opinions. There's the self-care is going on a mom's vacation or a whole spa day, you know, those really large, in my opinion, unsustainable type actions. And then there are the others, which is you should be happy that you got a shower. And I don't agree with either of those, honestly. So I started to look at the word sustainability. I know that is a really broad spectrum word. It's thrown out there for everything. But for me, I wanted what I considered to be self-care to be attainable, repeatable, and simple. So for me, you know, I've got 3 kids. I've now, you know, I've made the sacrifice of leaving my working or paid position. So I can't just throw money at everything, in any capacity, you know, and I can't just leave my kids constantly so that I can go to the nail appointment and then go to the hair appointment and then get a facial and all the things that make you feel good in that moment. But also, you know, so those things aren't easily repeatable. They may not be attainable for everybody, and they're not simple. Just going to get, you know, let's just take going to get your nails done. If that's what you're considering self-care, you either have to make sure that your spouse is home or that a parent is there, like a grandparent, or maybe you're arranging childcare. And then you've got to think about, okay, I'm paying for those things. I'm paying for the action of going to get that done. I've got to schedule that. Have you seen how far out books go? It might be a month. And you're needing that right then and there. So I started to look at, you know, what made me happy during the day. What are those things that I can build into my day? Well, I like to put lotion on after a shower. That's my favorite example to use. It takes me 5 minutes. And the trickle down feel good effect of that is huge. So I've taken care of myself. It's not the bare minimum necessity. A shower really isn't even always the bare minimum necessity. It's that food, the water, a roof over your head sort of thing. But you get your shower, so you've got that, what most of us consider a bare minimum done. Now I can put lotion on. I'm feeding into myself. I feel moisturized. My body doesn't feel tense. And so that's letting me let go of that sensory input of I'm tense. I've put something into myself and I feel more confident. For me, appearance is really hard. And so being able to say, okay, my legs look moisturized, I can put on a pair of shorts and go outside on a hot day and play with my kids. We've all got those little things about ourselves. For me, that's one of them. So it was like, okay, that's something that I can do. It's affordable, it's repeatable. It's really attainable every day for me to do that. And it's also not a prioritization thing. I know that I struggle with priorities. I can lay out my day and I can say, I'm prioritizing this, but something else will pop up and end up higher on that priority list. And then I'm deflated. I'm upset because I didn't get to do that thing I prioritized for myself. So I don't even focus on prioritization when it comes to self-care. I really go to sustainability. That's the word that I've latched onto. There's a couple pillars in it for me, and it's working. I'm taking care of myself better than I have. I'm finding those like micro joys, if you will. And so then when I get those larger pieces, like I do get to go get my nails done or something like that, those have so much more value for me.
Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed that shift in my values where they're at. If it takes forever to go get your nails done or something, if you're considering those larger things self-care, that gives you a long period of disappointment in between each time. You're like looking to get to that next thing, and that might be a month away versus small little bits of micro joy throughout your day to just keep you pumped up. That's where I'm putting my focus.
Yeah. I feel the same way as you, like the big things, same thing, I've given up, my career to be home. And so, when you're living on one income and, you have to prioritize different things. And, I I like having my nails done occasionally, but like I'm a bare nails kind of girl. And so like as much as when I have them done, I'm like, oh look at me, I'm so fancy. But the rest of the time I'm like, nah, they'll just chip because I'm doing this, that, and the other. And so, it is it's like those, like you say, those big things, they can be a lot more unattainable, and it's just finding those like little tiny moments of joy. And it just reminded me of like today, I one of the things I really love to do is just potter around in my kitchen, right? I really just love to, I don't say tidy up because I'm not like somebody who's like, I love cleaning, right? It's just a part of the day. But I was just like tidying up. Like I said, the kids were playing like really well together today. And I just put like some old school Backstreet Boys on and I was like dancing and loading the dishwasher, living my absolute best life. And I loved it. And yeah, it's just like those little teeny tiny moments, like our kitchen, our home is like semi-open plan. So there is like a half of a dividing wall, like it's full height, but it comes across only 3/4 of the room. So you can like peer around the corner, but you can also hide around the corner and eat the snacks that the kids can't eat as well. It's really, really quite well designed. And so, I was just around there and I felt like I was sort of like semi by myself. I could check in on the kids. They were pulling all the cushions off the sofa and just having a great time. And it was just like it's just those really small little moments that you can find. And yeah, today like I made jam and like sound very homemakery. I went raspberry picking yesterday. And so yeah, I was just making jam and I was just in my own world. And it's like, sometimes I think, like motherhood, parenthood in general, it can be very overstimulating. There's a lot of people demanding a lot of you a lot of the time. And especially, like breastfeeding, like when somebody is on you all the time, you're like, oh goodness, the next person that touches me, please do just leave me alone. And I still get it now. And we're 2 years in, and he has been feeding a lot recently, and so I have been noticing it more recently that I'm getting overstimulated from it. But I remember it like it was yesterday, like 2 years ago, thinking like, okay, please somebody take this child so I can just have 2 seconds to like wash myself.
Yes, totally. I love what you said about the music because um I mean, you got that have that moment. You brought yourself back to, youth. Like that's so important, so healthy. You feel, I mean, that in itself, the music is a joy, that getting brought back to youth for some people, that's like a major joy. So you got like so much little micro joys in there. But the other thing about it is that's something that you can, those self-care moments you can have with your kids too. You
Yeah.
know, you've got the divider thing. They could be over there dancing, having a blast. You guys are connecting, but you're still getting that moment to yourself around the corner. Critical things, you can accomplish things while the music is playing. Like you were just ticking so many of the boxes there with that one.
Yeah.
And I think that value, if people can get to that value and that simplicity, that will really help, mental health. And it's a mess right now. I mean, so many things have happened to the world that it's really hard. But I mean, I love, you mentioned raspberry picking. That's a huge, berry picking was huge for us when we were little. And it was something we did with our mom. And I know she enjoyed it too. I hope that, maybe we weren't too crazy for her. I hope she was enjoying it and getting some self-care out of it. But I mean, yeah, you hit on so many things there. It was just like, oh, and that I find joy in that too. I love to crank on the tunes that were from when I was little and see my kids get excited about them. Can have a dance party. We're getting so many things out of our system, connecting. But at the same time, there is a level of I'm taking care of things for myself when that's happening. And the touched out thing, oh my goodness. Constantly, I've got someone clinging on me, someone nursing. The other, the oldest is like noticing that maybe she's getting less physical attention. So she might be hanging on me from the backside, like trying to love on all of us and be included in that. Yeah, you get touched out real quick. And so self-care might not be getting your nails done or a massage because you don't want to be touched anymore. That stimuli has been hit, exacerbated, you are done.
Yeah, sometimes actually, like if I feel touched out, I'll say to my husband, like, right, I'm just going to go upstairs, and I will just lay in my bed by myself. And I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. This is the best thing. No one is touching me. No one is kicking me. No one's even here. I can't hear a word. It's beautiful. And yeah, it's just, I think in motherhood, a lot of the time, things happen, and like, we all like will snap or we're cranky, and it's like it's just overstimulation. There is a lot going on all the time, and I think we can sometimes give ourselves some grace that it's a lot. It's a lot. Small people are a lot, and we have to give a lot to when you're around them. You have to give them a lot, and so sometimes it's just overstimulating, touched out, everything is. And sometimes I just want to go. I've got like this very tiny, very very tiny utility room off of my kitchen, and it's basically a cupboard that somebody renovated many years ago. And sometimes I just go and stand in there, and I'm like, ah. It's where I eat all the good snacks too. It's my hideout.
Oh yeah.
It is my hideout.
That's my closet. I'll go in, I'll lock the door, and I'll climb to the top, grab my secret stash out of there, which recently was found. So that is not the secret stash location anymore. But yeah, I mean, you have to get really creative with that stuff for sure. But I mean, it's so simple. Like you're going into the utility closet. I mean, just reframing that mindset that, you can find those micro joys and you can get that. That was huge for me. And it feels good to hear that someone else is finding those too, because when I first started approaching it that way, I felt crazy. And I felt like, there was those times when people would look at me or like, are you devaluing yourself? No, I'm not devaluing myself. I'm finding what those joys are. I'm really stripping it down. And, from there I can grow. If I know what my true joys are or where I truly find value, when I go to step it up and do some of those bigger things or reward myself with, if it's a spa day for somebody, then you can really hone in on where you're finding those joys. You're not just keeping up with the Joneses or just like, oh, this is what we do for self-care. This is self-care. No, it needs to be what works for you. Everybody is individualistic. But we don't always know the true, like, this is what is bringing me joy. I know stained glass is not my thing. But if I think I'm artistic and then I go all in on stained glass and then I find out that is not bringing me joy, that is not self-care, I've gone really deep into that. So, if I know what it is I like about something because I've stripped it down, then as I have the capacity to do something bigger, then I can really kind of take it in the direction and be more fruitful with it and make sure that those things don't turn into chores and like burden.
Both of us, as we discussed, we're full-time stay-at-home mums. And like I said, it's not been the easiest transition. You said the same as well. And it's nice to have like little extra things to do. Like I said, this podcast actually is something that I just sort of found almost by accident. I was like, I think I'm going to do a podcast, and then came upstairs, said to my husband, I'm going to go upstairs and I don't know, do anything. And then suddenly decided, I was like, I've recorded 3 podcast episodes. So that's how that came about. And so just having those little things is just, it just feels important. So how do you think nurturing ourselves and like creating our identity beyond just being a mother really impacts our overall well-being and sort of therefore our ability to show up as the best version of ourselves?
So I have kind of maybe not a common thought on this. Maybe it's common and it's not fully realized by everyone. I don't know. I don't want to be like high on my horse or anything there, but there's this constant feed into mothers that what we do is not valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Motherhood the work is not valuable. And so I think that a lot of us internally feel like what we're doing is not valuable and that we have to have something else to feel valuable. And so we're measuring our worth by doing these other things. I wish it wasn't like that. I know that I feel that sometimes, having especially gone from being in the professional workforce to stay at home. I went through this phase of I'm not contributing financially. I should be thankful to my husband. I shouldn't go spending money frivolously because I didn't earn that money. Mm-hmm. I am equally, if not more so, a part of this, though.
Yeah.
We're not spending thousands of dollars on childcare. I'm nursing, so we don't have the expense of formula. I'm staying home doing all of these things that we would pay someone to do. You would pay someone to cook your meals. You would pay someone to clean your house.
Yeah.
You would pay someone to keep track of the mental load and shuttle your kids around and school them and all of these things. So my value is worth so much. Mm-hmm. But maybe because I don't, I'm not conditioned that way. That's not my first inclination. Maybe I don't feel valuable unless I go find something else outside of motherhood for myself. That's what I think sometimes. I feel like that really affects people's mental health, and how they feel about themselves. I'm just a stay-at-home mom, just a mom. Mm-hmm. You see that my Instagram handle is I'm just the mom. It's an internal joke we have in our family. world's not going to go around without my mom in my family. And so sometimes she would say things and be like, "Oh, you're just the mom," as a joke, because that's how people feel. That's how moms feel all the time. You have a baby, everyone wants to see the baby. Nobody's checking in to see how mom's doing.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. So I think about it as value. I think that as a society, the value maybe is lacking or is lacking. We know it's lacking. And because of that, sometimes I feel like we have to have something else besides motherhood. And I'm not saying that we don't.
Yeah.
I'm not discrediting that at all. Because there are things I want to do things for myself outside of motherhood, of course. But I also don't want it to be because the value isn't there in motherhood,
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm making sense with that, but that's where my head goes first is.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that, like it takes me some time as well, like to really not grasp it. Like I think, like you say, I think we're conditioned that, our work isn't valuable. And that is something that comes from society in general. I mean, even like, here in the UK recently, the government have been saying like, oh, we're going to help with more childcare. So more mums can get back to work after they have children. So offer some sort of free childcare, not really free, but more childcare options for like 3 hours of childcare, so we can get everybody back to work. And it's like they have referred to mothers as economically inactive, and it's like, do you know what? I am the most economically active person in my home. My husband might be the one who physically brings in the money because that's the setup we have chosen, but without me, most of the nappies wouldn't arrive, or the food wouldn't get done. Like, I'm not saying my husband couldn't do it. He absolutely could. Before we got married, he lived by himself for many years. But that's just the way it goes within our home. I'm happy to take on those things. He equally mostly does the cooking in our home. And so, it's mothers are always put sort of like in a little box that what we're doing is just not valuable, and that to be valuable we have to return to work and bring in money, work for somebody else, put our kids in childcare. And the work we do is really valuable, really, really valuable. Whether we are stay-at-home mums, whether we are working mums, we're always mums, right? My husband doesn't get called a work from home dad. He just gets called Ray, right? Nobody ever asks him, anything about the children and about their care. Also, men get away with like the bare minimum, right?
That was a conversation I've recently had with my mom. I've recently had with my husband. It's like, are you taking on the mental load that I have? Let me run through my list in my head right now. I've got to figure out what size clothes we're moving into, when we're going to move into them, and I've got to sort out the other ones, and I got to think about all the seasons, make sure we've got a jacket for this, a jacket for that. You just run down this full list. Sometimes women get this bad rap for they spend all the money. Well, we're spending the money for our kids to have clothes, the diapers, the food. We're spending the money to make the house go round. A lot of it we're not spending on ourselves. Just looks like we're spending a lot of money, but I don't see anybody else going through keeping track of that mental list and making it happen. It's in the US, women, they did a cost analysis for breastfeeding moms that are staying at home, and I think we're priceless. They did put a price to it, and they said it's around $300,000 per year.
Wow.
That's a lot of, because we're on the clock 24/7. We're giving our bodies, literally, our bodies are never the same each time that we've had a baby, and we are just constantly, when we're asleep, we're in motion. We're doing all the things. My husband can just go to sleep.
Yeah.
That's nice. He can get up in the morning. And yeah, my husband works so hard. He works sometimes over 12 hours a day out in the heat. And I value that. And I do not lessen his value. He gets up, he puts on what he needs for the day and takes care of himself for the day. And he's out the door before we're even up and at him. And that whole day, all he has to do is take care of himself, take care of himself. Comes home, it's the end of the day. He helps get the kids around for bed. The kids are off to bed and he's back to all he has to do is take care of himself. That's where his mental load is. When I wake up in the morning, I am already thinking and taking care of somebody else. I've not, but a couple times in the last few years, been able to like take care of just myself.
Wow.
I had a work trip when I was still in the professional world, working out of the home. It was the weirdest thing. I woke up and I took care of myself, but my head wasn't there. There's a level of guilt and all these things where I'm like, I got to call the kids. I need to tell the kids good morning, good night. I need to tell them what I'm up to for the day because I'm still the mom and I don't want them to think I abandoned them.
Yeah.
It doesn't go away.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about mental load because me and my husband were talking about it recently. So we went away for a week, and in the week leading up to going away, the notes app on my phone was filled with to-do lists. This is the list of clothes that everybody needs. I need to make sure that everybody's got clothes in case it's hot, in case it's cold, in case it rains. I need to make sure I've got like welly boots for them in case they want to go puddle jumping if it rains. Everything we could possibly need. And okay, lucky I breastfeed because I just need to take my boobs with me. But I remember when we went away with my daughter, it was like bottles and formula and the machine that makes the milk for us and just sterilizing everything. And so me and my husband were joking, he, same as yours, he works so hard for us, and I would never devalue the work that he does. But when it comes to holiday, he just packs his clothes into the case that I've left a space for you. That's for you. Please do it before I have to close the case up. And I'm sorting out myself. I'm sorting out 2 children. All eventualities for everything. Make sure that there's enough toys for them to play with while we're gone. They've got stuff to do in the car, and like me and my mum were talking about this as well. Like men, they just show up. We have such a mental load. Like my brain is going all of the time. I'm thinking like, tomorrow I'm taking the kids out. What do I need to do? Like, is the bag packed? And yeah, it's just constant. And our brains, I think, are just always worrying.
I agree. And then you get hit with that simple question, like, what do you want for dinner? And it's this huge joke everyone makes fun of, asking a woman what she wants, or a mom, particularly, what she wants for dinner. I don't know. No, I don't want that when they offer something. Well, that's that mental load.
Yeah.
That's hitting that pinnacle, that breaking point. I am doing so many vital things, keeping the ship afloat. And then you're going to pester me about what's for dinner, whether it's what are we going to go get or what are you going to cook? Sorry, I forgot to set out the meat. Like that was the last thing on my mind. I cannot think about dinner till we get to dinner because I'm keeping everybody alive. Like sometimes I see those jokes and yeah, sometimes I laugh with them, but sometimes I'm like, I know what the background of behind that is. I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
I don't have the mental capacity to process always. And until you spoon feed some of that to me, can I say, no, that does not sound good.
Yeah.
And I know that's just like a simple example, but there's so much behind that. And it's constant all day long. And yeah, my husband does work hard. He goes to work. He also doesn't have someone at his office, or if he doesn't work at the office, but whether it's the office or whether you're working outside, you don't have someone on your shoulder tapping, going, hey, how are you? Hey, can you give me that glass of water that I can grab myself? I just want you to do it because I know it tastes better if you do it. They don't have that person constantly just wearing you down. And mental work, which motherhood is mental and physical, but mental work is extremely physically exhausting too.
Yeah.
I mean, your whole body, because you tense up, your muscles are reacting, everything is reacting to that mental load. he comes home, I'm tired too. And I do not feel bad when I say, I'm off duty, you're on. Because I know that, yeah, he worked super hard physically. And yeah, he used his brain too. I'm not saying he doesn't use his brain, but I know that I work just as hard. And I wish everybody could reach that point, because I know there are so many moms out there that they've succumbed to their work isn't valuable. They've just let that take over, and they're living in that. And I wish that they weren't. I wish that we could all like find all those moms and pump them up and be like, you're worth more than $300,000.
Absolutely. So, I guess we've kind of touched on, like what the societal expectations of women are. And I think a lot of this does just come from, society and the way, just the way it's always been, women haven't been valued, and men seem to get off with like the bare minimum. Like when people would say like, oh, is he babysitting, and you're like, no, he's parenting his child and he's just as capable as me. But what advice would you give to mothers who are sort of struggling with that guilt, maybe, or maybe they're feeling judgment when they sort of spend any time focusing on themselves?
That's a hard one. The easy answer is to say, ignore it.
Yeah.
Know that you're worth more. It's so easy. It's easier said than done, but it's not easy. You're going to feel that guilt. You're going to feel that judgment. It's not going to just magically go away. And so I'm not perfect. I have my moments. I had a mental breakdown just the other day, and it was just all the things, but I step back and I go, okay, my children, they deserve my best. And they're not at the level I'm at. They don't know why mommy is, losing her mind or feeling devalued or storming around like, I just cleaned this house and you guys don't care. You threw stuff everywhere. They don't understand any of that. So they deserve my best. I can't always give them my best. They also deserve the truth. They deserve to understand that mommy's trying her hardest, but sometimes mommy's not always 100% there, or I'm upset and I'm having feelings, and that's normal. I don't want to sugarcoat it for them. And so I just feel like it's okay to feel the guilt. It's okay to look at that judgment, take it on head on, say something back on it, express what you're feeling. The most important thing that I can do is show my kids realistically what's going on, be real with them, feel my feelings, express them, do my best for them. Because if I bottle it up or I let that stuff take me over, like will it into fruition, like, yes, I'm worthless, those sorts of things. They're going to see that and they're going to think that's what reality is. I'm raising 3 girls.
Yeah.
I have to show them, they will potentially be mothers someday. They will potentially be in my shoes someday. So I have to show them the truth of it, I guess. I feel like everything I just said was like up and down and all over the place. There's my mom brain for you. But I mean, I have to set that example.
Yeah.
And I have all the feelings. I have anger. I have anxiety. I have self-doubts, I not always good value about what I'm doing to myself. I don't always feel confident in what I'm doing. I think the, popular term right now is imposter syndrome, but they need to see all of that and also know that at the same time, I'm trying my very best and they are my number one priority. And I think as long as you keep that your kids are your number one priority, that at the root of all things, you're doing your best. None of that other stuff matters. That is so superficial. The guilt that you're feeling, that's natural. And it's going to be there and there's no way to will it away. Embrace it, understand why you have it, but then understand that whatever you're doing that's causing you to feel that guilt, you're taking care of something else.
Yeah.
If you feel guilty because you're taking that 5 minutes to put that lotion on, think about the trickle down. You're taking care of so many things that are going to happen further down in the day, like the tension that your skin feels that makes you feel more tense, or the fact that you want to feel confident enough to wear shorts, but your skin's really dry. And if you don't put on that lotion, you can't put on the shorts. And then you're wearing pants and it's really hot outside. And so then you don't want to take your kids outside to play. Like, you're taking care of things.
Yeah.
So that just goes right back to like how I think about things, where I'm trying to strip it down to the root, the most basic, like, why am I doing this? This is simple, but it has a huge impact. It does bring me joy. It might be a micro joy, but it has a really big impact and it connects. Now I can go outside on a hot, hot day in shorts and feel okay playing with my kids. So there, I felt guilty about taking those 5 minutes, but guess what I did? Took my kids outside to play. Connect those dots for yourself. You've got a reason that you're doing it. And it may not be apparent at that moment. The guilt's going to be there, but you've probably got a good reason for whatever you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like so often we just feel lost in motherhood, sometimes early in motherhood. You know, the newborn days, let's not sugarcoat it, they are rough. Having a newborn is rough. And you know, you've obviously got one more child than me, like, but you know, my first child was like, you know, like, it's a baptism of fire when you have a child, but actually it was a real baptism of fire when you go from like 1 to 2. 1 to 2, I don't know what 2 to 3 is like, but 1 to 2, I felt like and I always say this to my mum, I'm like, because I'm an only child, so she has no frame of reference. One child is like one child, 2 children is like I've got 500 children. And it's like, you know, it is a lot. There's a lot of needs going on. There's a lot of different people wanting different things. They're different ages. And, you know, it is easy for us to put ourselves on the back burner. And it's easy for us to, you know, not give ourselves what we need. And I find, and you touched on it as well, like, you know, when you don't have those small things that bring you some joy, that take care of yourself, even, you know, putting lotion on, taking 5 minutes to lay completely flat on your bed by yourself, those little or dancing to the Backstreet Boys while loading the dishwasher, whatever it might be. I think if I personally don't take those moments, like you say, it trickles down in a different way, because I'm more stressed and I'm more anxious and fraught, and I'm more likely to snap. And then, you know, it's not their fault. They're just kids, and they're just being kids, and they don't understand all of that. But I think, you know, like we've mentioned, society expects a lot from us with absolutely no rewards. And I don't mean like financial reward or anything, but it also at the same time tells us that our work isn't valuable. So it expects us to do it, but it's not valuable. And what you should really be doing is going back to work. And if you're already at work, then, you know, you just can't win. Whatever you do, whatever we do, we cannot win. You know, because just the general narratives are like, well, if you're at home full time with your kids, like, why are you not working? And if you're working, it's like, well, why are you not at home with your kids? So what do you want from me? I don't know what you want. And women are pulled that way all the time. We cannot do it right for in terms of society, because society doesn't really know what it wants from us. But I think, you know, all that we can really do is just do what works for our own individual families. But do you have any tips for people who want to maybe start nurturing themselves a bit more? Maybe they've realized that, oh, I don't do anything for myself and I would really like to. Do you have any tips for how to start that process of nurturing yourself outside of motherhood?
Yeah, it's a hard one, because everybody is so diverse. So I look at capacity. Kind of look at your capacity. I know this in itself takes time to do, but what are those things that you have to do? Those vitals to keep the ship afloat. You know, for For me right now, it is getting my kids fed every day, taking care of their immediate needs. Okay, so those are the things that cannot be avoided. We kind of know when those have to happen. And so then I look at my capacity from there. What can I facilitate? What can I not? Because if you go full force into self-care, but the immediate needs, those critical things that you have to do for motherhood are also very high, and then you try to do a lot of self-care all at once, you're going to one, hit some extreme burnout. You're going to have resentment towards those self-care things that you're trying to introduce. And then you're going to also increase your resentment for those motherhood tasks. Like, dang it, I have to feed the kids, so I can't go get my nails done, and that's not appropriate, right? You have to feed the kids. So you don't want to increase resentment in either of those things. You don't want to cause burnout for either of those things. That's a recipe for disaster. So I always think for myself, I have to start with my capacity. What can I take on? And that's mental capacity as well as physical capacity. You've got X amount of hours in a day. Everybody's day is different, whether it's 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or, whatever. You've only got so much time. So that's the first where I go first when I'm trying to figure out, what I want to do for myself, how I'm going to include self-care. And then from there, kind of like I said, I strip it way down. I look at, okay, bare minimum essentials for myself. Got to get a shower. My day is not going to start unless I get that shower. And okay, I need to feed myself. And, moms, a lot of times, I find myself not eating until like 2 p.m., sometimes dinner time.
Yeah.
How am I going to be at my prime if I'm not fueling myself appropriately? So you kind of work in, make sure all those essentials are being hit. And then you hit the next small thing, which for me was putting on lotion after the shower instead of jumping out, getting dressed, and, like full force into the next thing that needs to be done. It was take that 5 minutes, put on that lotion, trickle down to that's important. So I very slowly ramp up. That way I can really create a habit out of those really important small ones. I know that those are going to get done. I don't have to fight those, prioritization. I don't need to fight it. I can slowly get a grasp on those, and then I can introduce some of the big ones or periodically do the big ones. But everything in my life is around capacity. And when I look at what my daily, weekly, monthly capacity is, then I look at the criticals and the non-criticals. I don't know, that's probably a personality thing for me, type A type personality thing. But it allows me to not, say, all right, every day I'm going to fix my hair, put on makeup, make sure my outfit is flawless, things that maybe aren't realistic for me every day. That's easy for me to get downtrodden, like feel bad about myself. I look like I just rolled out of bed. Well, no, I don't, but I feel like that because I've set the standard that's unrealistic. Not to mention that I don't have time to do that every day.
Lindsay, it's been so wonderful to have you on the podcast and share with us all your views on motherhood and how we can, just start taking care of ourselves in just really sort of small, minute ways and just build from there. So where can the listeners connect with you online?
Well, back to that capacity thing, I'm really inconsistent. So I am frequently on Instagram at I am just the mom. Don't take that name offensively. That is a joke because I'm not just a mom, even though it feels like it sometimes. But you find me there frequently. I tend to live in my stories because that's my quickest way. But like I said, I'm inconsistent. I do have a blog, but I really struggle to get it down on paper. I'm flying by the seat of my pants like most moms. So Instagram's probably the best place to catch me, and just know that you're not going to get a consistent level of content out of me, and it's going to be all over the place. It's going to be what I'm feeling at that moment. So
that's the best part about Instagram. And I'm the same, like not anywhere else. Like well, I've got my blog, I've obviously got a podcast, but social media It's just Instagram. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun. Thank you for being at the first podcast that I've ever gotten to be on. It's been really relaxing, exciting. I love chatting with you, like we do day to day. So this has been really fun to like actually have a conversation with you across the pond, but still face to face. So it's been great.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was just a wonderful discussion with Lindsay. I really, really enjoy talking about with other parents, where we were, where we started, maybe pre parenthood, and then where we have ended up, because often it's so far different from what we imagined. And I think that just comes with the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows of parenting, really. But it was really interesting to hear from another parent, that feeling that sometimes, and it's completely okay, that sometimes parenting and parenthood, motherhood, sometimes we want just a little more than that, and that's okay, and it's nothing to feel guilty about. And whether that comes in the form of hobbies or self-care or working outside the home or working inside the home or whatever that looks like, it's normal to have those feelings. And I just feel like, over time I have definitely sort of realized that I thrive better as a mother when I have that time and space to be myself and to do things that I love. And those things, like I mentioned in the episode, those things largely revolve around the way I live my life with slow and seasonal living, but also the things that I get to do, this podcast, my blog, things like that. They're all things that bring me so much joy. And Lindsay and I are in very different places when it comes to the ages of our children. She still has very small children. I mean, I would say my children are still very small, but she still has a baby as well, and that's remarkably different. My children are 2 and 4 now, and I do feel that as the time has gone on, I'm getting to a point now where I'm having that little bit more free time. And I'm rambling, but just to say that this podcast is an amazing outlet for me. I love doing it. I love connecting with other people, interviewing some amazing guests. I'm so lucky that I get to have these conversations. And it just brings me so much joy, and it's just that something for myself outside of motherhood that I really enjoy and just really helps me thrive. So thank you again for listening to today's episode. I am over on Instagram. You can follow me there as usual. My username there is @lifeonplot44. You can also check out the blog at theslowlivingcollective.com. And I don't think I'm anywhere else. Lindsay and I were talking about Threads, but I think you can find that from Instagram. And who knows, by the time this episode goes live, maybe Threads it won't even be a thing anymore, eh? Who knows? But if it is, in the future, when you listen to this episode, you can come find me there as well. Thank you again so much for listening, and I will catch you all in my next episode.